Let me now conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, by saying the following. Our approach to race and religion has largely been successful. The lived reality of Singaporeans is the test. In a Gallup World Poll in 2016, Singapore ranked top out of 140 countries for tolerance of ethnic minorities. In 2016, the CNA IPS survey on race relations, which I referred to earlier, respondents strongly endorsed issues relating to multiculturalism. 96% agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "I have respect for people from all races." And President Obama said this in 2015 about Singapore. And one of the reasons why Singapore has been so successful is because we, and I quote, have been able to bring together people who may look different, but they all think of themselves as part of Singapore. He said there has to be strength. That has to be a strength, not a weakness. But that requires leadership and a government being true to those principles. I started this speech by referring to 4 events in 4 countries and asked if there might be a larger picture. What is the larger picture? If you look at tab 15, my speech has attempted to sketch that picture. On the spectrum of race and religious relations, we are in the positive part of the spectrum because of the way we have structured our legal, social framework and all the things we have done to maintain racial, religious harmony. What has been happening in Iraq and Syria is an illustration of what can happen when things go badly, not just in terms of race and religion, but other things go badly. So they are in the deeply negative part of the spectrum. New Zealand represents a warning and alert to us. Even a country which can fairly be described as heaven on earth can suffer a serious attack. It shows how hate speech can fuel crazy people. And what happened in New Zealand can happen elsewhere. So New Zealand is positive on the spectrum, but uninhibited hate speech can have terrible consequences. Netherlands, Utrecht, problems that extremism poses, even in advanced, prosperous societies, is shown up by that attack. Integration issues in Europe. So it's a flashing amber light. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said the multicultural concept is a failure, an absolute failure. She's talking about Europe. We don't want that in Singapore. Former British Prime Minister David Cameron said, "We have failed to provide a vision of society to which different cultures feel that they want to belong. We have even tolerated these segregated communities behaving in a way that runs counter to our values. For us, cancelling of Watain is one discrete step. Why we did that can only be understood by understanding the larger picture of why we are in the positive part of the spectrum. And that is why we are different from so many others. Our current racial and religious harmony didn't fall ready-made from the sky. It is not part of the natural order of things. There is nothing natural about it. We engineered this over many decades. People accuse us of social engineering. So what, I ask? We imposed ethnic quotas in housing to prevent racial enclaves in our housing estates and possible ghettos, banlieues, as they are called in France. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right. We have GRCs to ensure minority representation in Parliament. Look around this House. Could we have guaranteed this number of Malay Indian members if not for GRCs? We have the Presidential Council for Minority Rights. Checks that bills passed by Parliament do not discriminate against any racial or religious community. We have protection of minorities written into the Constitution. We have the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act. Everyone knows in Singapore, we will have no hesitation arresting any bigot of whatever persuasion. Anyone burns the Bible or Quran or any holy book in the name of freedom of speech, ISD will deal with him. We long ago stopped Christian preachers from evangelizing insensitively amongst Muslims. We have had a recent case in Clementi of an attempt to evangelize to Muslim boys, and police are investigating. We have the current harmony because we did all this, not despite, but because. We took no chances. We brooked no agitation on race and religion. We refused to let the state bow to any religious or racial group, minority or majority. In Singapore, we organize ourselves horizontally. All races and religions are treated equally on the same level. Most other countries in Asia, if not all, either explicitly or implicitly organize themselves vertically on the basis of ethnic, religious hierarchy, including a liberal democracy like Japan. Our uniqueness in this respect should not be underestimated. Equality of races and religions is not the natural order of things. It has to be defended. On the very first day of our existence as a sovereign, independent state, the founding Prime Minister said, "This will not be a Chinese nation, not a Malay nation, not an Indian nation." From the beginning, the government determined it will base its legitimacy by appealing to all Singaporeans, not just the majority Chinese. That determination to be multiracial, multi-religious, that determination that no one will be squatted upon on account of his race or religion, the color of his skin, or the language he speaks, that's why we became independent, and we mean to keep it that way. If anything, we are prepared to err on the side of caution and risk overreacting to preserve harmony rather than take chances and risk explosions. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, reflecting back in a New York Times interview, said in 2010, "I've got to tell the next generation, please do not take for granted what's been built. I believe our younger generation has come to believe that this is a natural state of affairs. They think you can put it on autopilot. I know that this is never so. Let us heed his warning. What we have in Singapore is precious, hard-fought, but we are only 54 years old. A multiracial meritocracy, unique, but the values are not yet so deeply embedded to be unassailable." Mr. Speaker, I invite members to consider the questions I have raised, and just in case they have not taken it down, the list of questions are also in the tab, so that you can refer to it as you speak. So I beg to move that the ministerial statement made by me on restricting hate speech to maintain racial and religious harmony in Singapore be considered by Parliament. Thank you, sir.